Assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi Muhammad.
It's a great honor for me and a pleasure to be able to share a few moments with you, dear brothers and sisters, and to be at the service of IMAC. The title was given to me to speak about this title a few days ago, and inshallah we'll start and see where we'll end, inshallah. This dua, I'll first quickly go through the dua and the quick translation, and then we'll get deeper into it, inshallah. So it says, Allahumma arifni nafsak. O Allah, O my Allah, grant me irfan of yourself. And if self is a bit uncomfortable, at least say your essence. Grant me irfan of your essence. فَإِنَّكَ إِن لَمْ تُعَرِّفْنِي نَفْسَكَ. Otherwise, if you don't grant me irfan of your essence, لَمْ أَعْرِفْ رَسُولَكَ. I won't have irfan of your Rasul. Here the term irfan keeps on coming in this dua. And then it continues. Allahumma arifni Rasulak. O Allah, grant me irfan of your messenger. فَإِنَّكَ إِن لَمْ تُعَرِّفْنِي رَسُولَكَ لَمْ أَعْرِفْ حُجَّتَكَ. Because if you don't grant me irfan of your Rasul, of your messenger, I won't have irfan of your hujjah. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't say imam, it says hujjah. So here, this has a lot of secrets, and we'll open that up inshallah tomorrow. But the fact that it doesn't say your imam, it says your hujjah. And then it says, Allahumma arifni hujjatak, grant me irfan of your hujjah, فَإِنَّكَ إِن لَمْ تُعَرِفْنِي هُجَّتَكَ دَلَلْتُ عَنْ دِينِي. Because if I don't have irfan of your hujjah, of your proof on earth, then I will be misguided from my religion. So here there are a lot of codes here, but we'll go slowly inshallah and see where this will get us. In relation to the chain of narrators, because you know with these du'as, they have authenticity. Some, you may find no chain of narrators for some du'as. And even if there are no chain of narrators for a given du'a, that's not something drastic or anything. You can still benefit from that du'a, but you can't say it's from an imam. With this du'a though, from two chains of narrators, and they all are traced back to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, we know who the narrators are, and the biographies have been substantiated, and so this dua, this much of it is authentic. And this is what we have in Al-Kafi, this dua. But then we have a scholar of 800 years ago, Sayyid ibn Tawus, and I'm going to speak about him very little, something Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh has said. He then speaks of a particular dua which starts exactly like these three sentences which we've mentioned. And he says that, I'll just read something which he says in relation to this particular dua. You have to forgive me, one of the temples of my pair of glasses have become detached, so I have to revert to these other older glasses which he says, إِيَّاكَ أَن تَحْمِلَ الدُّعَاءَ بِهِ فَإِنَّنَا عَرَفْنَا ذَلِكَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ جَلَّ جَلَالُهُ الَّذِي خَصَّنَا بِهِ فَأْتَمِدْ عَلَيْهِ. Now on the status of who Sayyid ibn Tawus is, I'm going to read something in a minute. But he says, beware, be careful, not to oversee, not to treat lightly this particular dua, and I'll mention what dua it is. Verily, we have acquired irfan of this dua. He himself, he's acquired the irfan of this dua from Allah's grace. As a result of Allah's grace, that Allah, who has specifically allocated it, the grace to him, and therefore rely upon it a lot, this dua. And the fact that he's saying we have acquired irfan of this dua by Allah's grace, this is a lot here. He's reached the inner dimensions of this. He's acquired irfan of this dua, and now he's saying, don't treat it lightly. This dua will keep you safe. Now, but when he gives the chain of narrators of this dua, which starts with the same 3 sentences, his chain of narrators differ. It's traced back to the first specific deputy amongst the 4 deputies of the 12th Imam in the Minor Occultation, Uthman ibn Sa'id. Now this becomes very important now. Because now this has because he was a specific deputy of the 12th Imam. It's as if the 12th Imam has given the stamp of approval for this dua. But the thing is, with this dua, which Sayyid ibn Tawus is talking about, it's a much longer dua, maybe 10 times as much as the 3 sentences we read. So you see, if Imam Sadiq alayhi salam gave those 3 sentences, the chain of narrators were complete. This has the approval of the 12th Imam himself, because it's the first deputy. We can assume that. And so, here, but it's another dua. But this other dua starts with the same 3 sentences. And even the dua which is attributed to the 12th to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, as I say, there are different chains of narrators. They give the same dua, but there are sometimes differences. Instead of Rasul, like it says Nabiyyak, for example. We have those minor differences. But there are so many other duas with the same logic, we don't have a problem in relation to that. Okay, now in relation to Sayyid ibn Tawus, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh has a book. I've just translated this part of it. I'll quickly go through, I don't want to divert too much, but it's worthy. It's worthy to know this, because this idea that we wanted the irfan of his holy essence, the irfan of the Holy Messenger, and the irfan of Allah's Hujjah. This is important. As the dua, we're asking for it. This idea of wanting the irfan of something. Okay, in this book of Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh Omri, he says, on another night, while sitting down in the state of tawajjuh, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh Omri says, I saw in the skies that the moon was eclipsed. Now he was in a state of tawajjuh. State of tawajjuh is in your solitude at the middle of the night. You're in a state of attentiveness to Allah. You're not looking out or anything. This is an inner state here. I saw the skies that the moon was eclipsed. I stood up and exited the house and went outside. I realized that there was an eclipse occurring and that the moon is eclipsed. Oh my dear, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh saying, His Excellency, the adornment of the Gnostics, Radi ad-Din Ali ibn Musa, known as Sayyid ibn Tawus, who died 644 after the Hijrah, about 800 years ago. May Allah sanctify his spirit, was someone of whom my mentor, Allama Tabatabai, author of the Grand Exegesis Al-Mizan, had said that His Excellency, or His Excellencies, Ibn Fahd, and Allama Tabatabai had said that His Excellency, meaning Sayyid Ibn Tawus, then Ibn Fahd, another very important scholar, and Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum, these 3 were amongst the Kummalin, the Gnostics who have reached perfection. The virtuous and exalted book, Iqbal, it's a book of du'as, is one of Sayyid Ibn Tawus's valued works, which was finally printed by the prominent of the prominent, honor of Islam, Sheikh of the exalted jurisprudence, felicitous martyr, Hajj Sheikh Fadlullah Tabari and Nouri, who became martyred about 150 years ago. May Allah illuminate his heart. Pay attention to the following few lines written by the Sayyid pertaining to himself in his Iqbal. So now he's quoting what Sayyid ibn Tawus has said in his book Iqbal. Acknowledge that concerning Allah's informing of his servants in relation to something that Allah wills, all the means for this is neither confined to the mere intellect, nor is it perceived by the Sharia alone. Don't think that everything we should have access to in relation to reality and the cosmos and the secrets and everything is limited to either scripture or through our rationality. It's not limited here. Allah's not limited to these two paths when he wants to inform me and you of inner truths. After all, Allah, majestic be his majesty, is essentially able and can inform his servants whenever he wants and wherever he wants, based on his will. I know with certitude of those who acknowledge the first day of every month in the lunar calendar. The first day of every month, all be they not having A, visually looked for the crescent, B, not having been in the presence of those who had seen the crescent, C, not having acted upon aforementioned measures of ascertaining the first day stipulated in the traditions, D, not having acted upon the words of astrologers, E, not having acted via istikhara, F, not having acted upon the words of experts in the science of numerology, and G, not having seen anything in their dreams. So they acknowledge this is the first day of the lunar month, the first day of Ramadan, for example, without any of these routes, but they acknowledged it. Because sometimes you can do it through astrology, for example, you can do it through other means. Some are more perfect than others, but he knows people that have done it without all these. Rather, this being informed was out of the grace of the Lord of worlds, who granted them with the light of intellects without them ever asking for it. People who have never asked for it, Allah gave them the light of knowledge, and who inspired them with self-evident knowledge without them ever requesting such a state. Nevertheless, such people themselves become duty-bound by means of such experiences after acquiring them with certitude. And so, when someone receives divine knowledge that today is the first of the holy month, without having seen it, without even going through the Sharia, okay? For these people, if they have certitude, for these people it will be proof, but not for me and you. Even if they tell us, it's not proof for us. It's only proof for themselves. So Sayyid ibn Tawus writes this. Sayyid ibn Tawus is someone who everyone accepts today. All the Maraja, all the great scholars. Then Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh continues. In summary, he, Sayyid ibn Tawus, is stating that, in quotes, I am informed of the commencement of every lunar month without depending upon any of the methods of ascertaining it. That's it. Then he says, in this domain, paying heed to the content of sentence number 28 in our book, 1001 Sentences, is very deserving. Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh now is referring to another book of his own, called 1001 Sentences. and he's quoting from that. It writes, how well put by Aynul Qudat Hamadani in chapter 62 of his book Zubdatul Haqa'iq, where he wrote, look, he's always tracing back, even the knowledge Ayatollah Hassan Zad is giving, he's tracing it back to the true scholars. We're becoming more and more deprived of this kind of presentation and speech. We should, the mimbaris, those who speak on the pulpit, have to be careful not to just give their own opinion and speak of the great scholars. And when they give something, it shouldn't be a sound bite. It should be something which is based on the earlier scholars and the true scholars. And let's say if it's a difference of opinion, at least speak through the correct protocol of action, the standard protocols, not just say something nilly-willy. In his Zubdatul Haqa'iq, he wrote this Aynul Qudat Hamadani, which is a very important arif of a few centuries ago, where he wrote, the knowledge of the prophets are ladunni. Now, this will be explained in a minute. Whoever's knowledge is extrapolated from books and teachers, they are not inheritors of prophets, knowledge-wise. Just because you've been taught something or you've read something, you don't become an inheritor of the prophet. Because we have traditions where the ulama are inheritors of the prophet. But here, it's the ulama are defined here. Not someone who's just read some books and has a number of teachers. Rather, save if one expands the notion of inheritance. He's saying, okay, there may be a loophole here. You expand what inheritance means. It may include those who learn through books and teachers too. The knowledge of prophets do not benefit save from Allah. Whatever benefit comes, it's only from Allah. Whatever the prophets say, it's all benefit, and this benefit is solely through Allah. As he has said in chapter 96, verse 3. Now this may be an error because I've written something beside it which it may be ambiguous. But the verse, and your Lord is the most generous who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. And by no means think that the teaching of the truth of Allah is specific to prophets alone. Don't think only Allah, when he says, and taught man what he doesn't know, don't think that Allah's teaching man is specific to the prophets. And here, when Allah teaches the prophet, it's through inspiration, it's through revelation, it's ladunni. The knowledge is in unity with themselves. The knowledge isn't acquired from outside themselves. It's from within. It's from their hearts. It's revealed upon their hearts. Here, Aynul Qudat Hamadani is saying, don't think that this is only specific to prophets. Even non-prophets have this access to such knowledge. Allah has said, have taqwa before Allah and Allah will teach you. A verse from the Holy Quran in chapter 2. And whoever attains to the truth of taqwa in one's wayfaring, Allah will inevitably teach one that which one did not know. And He, Allah, will be with such a person, as He has said, verily Allah is with those who have taqwa and those who have ihsan. That's the end of that quote. And then Ayatollah Hassan Zadi continues, concerning the phrase of Aynul Qudat Hamadani, and by no means think, etc., one must assign a difference between legislative prophethood and informative prophethood. Legislative prophethood ended with the revelation of the Holy Quran. Informative prophethood, however, continues eternally. Sheikh Bahai writes in his Kashkul, now he's quoting something from Sheikh Bahai. His Majesty, Sheikh Abul Hassan al-Kharghani, whose name is Ali ibn Ja'far, was one of the exalted people of Gnosticism and he died on the eve of the 10th of Muharram in the year 425 after Hijrah. Reproaching those scholars who spend their whole lives writing books, he said, verily the inheritor of the Prophet, may Allah's peace and salutations be upon him, is one who abides by him, the Prophet, in action and ethics, not one who constantly blackens pieces of paper with one's pens. That's another point to bear in mind. Then Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh again continues. Now pay precise attention to the content of these two traditions. The first is a prophetic tradition, where the Holy Messenger said scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, the ulama. The second tradition is in Usul al-Kafi, where Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is narrated to have said, verily scholars, and the translation of scholars may not be correct here, because the Arabic is ulama, and ulama is the plural of not alim necessarily, but alim. And alim is when one has a true inner knowledge of things, not just alim. Alim, yes, you can go and read a few books and teachers, you become an alim. But someone may be unlettered, may have never gone to school, and illiterate, but they can qualify as alim. Which one is more important? Of course the alim is more important. Verily, scholars, so who's saying this? It is a hadith. Verily, the ulama, because that's a more, scholars may not be a good translation here, because the mind goes somewhere else. The ulama are the inheritors of the prophets, and this is because prophets don't merely bequeath dirhams and dinars. Rather, they truly bequeath traditions amongst their traditions. And whoever clings onto them, they will receive an abundant fortune. Oh my dear, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh is now saying, constituting a great veil against man is one's soul, that is filled with technical terms of the sciences that do not lead to one's true certitude. After all, it is the transparent heart that is emptied of all these that must perceive the truth of things as they are. In our compendium of traditions, there are traditions from our Imams, who are the intermediaries of Allah's grace, that read, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, the Spirit of Allah, and Allah's word said, don't say that knowledge is in the skies and whoever elevates will find it. Don't say knowledge is in the inner layers of the earth and whoever descends will find it. Rather, knowledge is innately assigned in your hearts. Observe the spiritual etiquettes before Allah and incorporate the traits of the truthful, and knowledge will appear from your hearts until it covers you. And it's narrated from the seal of prophets that he said, knowledge is a light that Allah assigns to the hearts of whoever wants it. So you see, and it continues, but this much is sufficient for our purposes. So when we want to be granted irfan of Allah's essence, granted irfan of the irfan of Allah's messenger and Allah's hujjah, it's not an academic thing. And that's why the word irfan is used. And the heart has to be the recipient of such an irfan. Not books or lectures or these kind of things. You purify your heart, you will recognize. Irfan means kind of recognition. You'll recognize the holy essence. You'll recognize the Prophet. You'll recognize the 12th Imam, and so on and so forth. So here we see that imamat, like risalat, like tawheed, is a fitri issue. A pure heart has to understand it. Otherwise you read all the books on tawheed and prophethood and imamat and everything with a corrupt heart. What benefit do you want to? You just have the label of a Muslim, but you may burn in hell eternally. You see? One shouldn't be complacent. So here, this aspect at the heart. And Sayyid Ibn Tawus, who has had many such experiences, says, look, this dua, I've seen the inner dimensions to it. Rely upon it greatly. And in the traditions, it speaks of this being a protocol in the ghaiba of the qa'im during the major occultation. Now, what kind of a protocol is this? Is it just an academic one? Of course not. What are the practical aspects that we can get from this? So this we have to, inshallah, now start and try and open up. Okay, in chapter 84, verse 6, Ya ayyuhal insan, innaka kadihun ila rabbika kadha famulaqi. That, oh man, verily you're laboring, striving towards your Lord, a thorough striving, and the result is you'll meet him. You'll meet him, famulaqi. Him refers to your Rabb, because it says ila rabbika. That's an important point. All this will click, inshallah, all tomorrow, maybe tonight. And then you'll connect with your Lord. Now here the question arises, when and how? Is it only limited to this world in the hereafter, or can we encounter our Lord and meet our Lord in this world too? Without a doubt, the traditions, the verses of the Holy Quran says it's possible even now in this world. Not only in the hereafter, we can do it here. And that's what we want in the dua here. When we say, Allahumma arifni nafsak, rasulak, hujjatak. So this is something is to be acquired now. Don't put religion, on delayed payment. Put religion on credit. We want to taste it now. If we don't taste it, what's the use? It'll be something very dry, without life, without spirit. And here, everyone, everything, I was going to say, be Muslim or non-Muslim, but everything, animals, plants, stones, is moving towards perfection. Everything is moving in this world, in this cosmos. Everything is moving. And everything is moving towards its perfection. Now, be it a stone, a plant, even stones, after millions of years, may have started as earth, then slowly became, over time, gold, silver, copper, all these things. Plants, animals, and humans, we're all going towards perfection. And this wasn't our choice. It's the way the cosmos was built. If you like, it was predestined that we are all traveling towards perfection. And we all want it. We can't escape it. Okay? But where the choice element comes in is it perfection in vice or perfection in virtue that you've gained? Well, even a thief, when he wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to steal from this person or place, he believes that is the perfect thing to do, a better thing to do. He sees their salvation in that. It's an erroneous judgment, but he's on his line towards perfection, and he sees it in this action, which is legislatively haram. But that's an error on his part. But the fact is, going towards perfection, it's inevitable. But in this case, it would be perfection in vice. We want to go towards perfection in virtue. And here, man, ya ayyuhal insan, it's a fitri principle here. When it says, oh man, it doesn't matter who you are. You're all laboring towards Allah. Whether you want it or not. Whether you're a Muslim or a non-Muslim. Iyaka na'abud. Only Allah can be submitted to. Even the idol worshipper, when they are worshipping the idol, okay, they're worshipping Allah, but they're unaware of it. An idol can't be worshipped. Iyaka na'bud. Only He can be worshipped. Only you, Allah, you say it in our prayers, only you we worship. Imam Khomeini in the tafsir of this verse says, because only He can be worshipped. No one else can be worshipped. So when someone worships an idol, they're worshipping Allah, but they've made an error. And they have to pay for that error. That's another issue. Okay, they've made a mistake. Here, the verse is saying everyone's going towards Allah and you'll meet Him. Now, because Allah is the absolute perfection, you may encounter Allah's attributes of majesty and wrath and revenge. If you went along perfection in vice, and if you went through perfection in virtue, you'll encounter Allah's attributes of compassion, love, and so on and so forth. So it all depends, but we're all going towards perfection. We're all going towards Allah, and we're all going to encounter Him. How fortunate are those who encounter Allah in this world? Okay, now with that introduction, now when it says Allahumma arifni nafsak, O Allah, grant me irfan of your essence, of yourself. Here a question arises that what does it mean, Allah's essence? Bear in mind, we want to be granted irfan of Allah's essence. So that Allah has many manifestations. Some of Allah's manifestations are physical manifestations. Everything we see in this physical world. And in the Quran too, أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ وَإِلَى السَّمَاءِ كَيْفَ رُفِعَتْ. Don't you see the camel, how it's created, the skies, how it's raised, and so on and so forth, and the verse continues. Imam Khomeini says this is good. Some people, they learn of Allah and know Allah through the camel. He said, it's not bad, but it's a great shame, he says, in Adab Salat. He says, it's a great shame. Allah has much more deeper, metaphysical manifestations that is beyond this physical eye. And your access to knowing, recognizing, acquiring irfan of Allah is merely confined to the physical things. There's a sun, there's a moon, there has to be a creator. It's something which the intellect understands. It's not bad, but look, it's a bare minimum. It's a minimum. And even there, it's a knowledge of Allah, it's an academic knowledge. It's something which you do with your eyes and you apply a bit of intellect, you say, there's a creator. It's a bare minimum. That doesn't help you too much. It won't. Your spirituality is still at a very low stage here. Allah though has semi-immaterial manifestations too. In the Quran, when it speaks of the heaven and hell, the houris, the palaces, the food. For example, هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. When they are given the fruits and everything, they say, oh, we were given this before, because it's very similar to the fruits of this world. But it's semi-immaterial, it's more perfect. The food and everything is more perfect compared to the food here. But when we see it, oh, we were given this before. Heaven and hell is a semi-immaterial. It's like the stuff that your dreams are made out of. There's no physical matter. But you see things in your dreams. You eat, you drink, you benefit, you have joy in certain things that happen in your dreams. But with your dreams, you wake up in heaven and hell, there's no waking up anymore. Some people have access to the heaven or hell whilst they're here in this world. For example, in the same book, Ayatollah Hassan Zadeh says that once I had a vision. I was awake though. He had a vision of his lips being knitted, and it was of great pain. And then he said to those who were doing it, why are you doing this? They said, futile talk. Because for an Ayatollah, you can't just speak of, futile, with things which have no relevance. And maybe he said he spoke futilely, and this was his punishment. He saw his hell. He saw his barzakh whilst in this world. And the good thing was he was guided as to what the reason was, and he amended his ways. If we have that access, when we die a physical death, our barzakh would be much more refined and pure. It's just that we don't have access to it. And we don't see it, the semi-immaterial reality. We just see with our physical eyes. And therefore we can't benefit. Therefore we have to just have our punishment when we die a physical death. But the Holy Messenger says, die before you die. Die a spiritual death, a transition from one realm to a higher realm, a semi-immaterial realm, even a higher realm and a higher realm, before you die a physical death. Because the more you gain access to the metaphysical realms, the more it will help you after your physical death. You'll be more informed by Allah what's happening. This informing. So that's another manifestation of Allah. You want to meet Allah? Is it through His physical manifestations? Is it through His semi-immaterial manifestations that you want? Which is good. You're growing if you're having such visions. Is it through Allah's immaterial manifestations? Inspirations which have no color, size, shape, like semi-immaterial dreams, which has color, size, shape, but no matter, no physical matter. Here now, we're talking of something which doesn't even have those semi-immaterial color, size, and shape that you see in your dreams. It's immaterial now. And this is the reality of angels. Their reality is something immaterial. In the Quran it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ. Those who say our Rabb is Allah. Now there are degrees to that. Okay, you take the higher degree. ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. Then they stay steadfast on their Tawheed. تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. Angels descend upon them. These are immaterial realities now. Although angels can descend down as semi-immaterial realities, but their essence is immaterial. So look, the Quran is giving all these protocols and prescriptions and what we can gain access to. But then there are even realms higher than the immaterial realm. Sorry for this long introduction, but the dua is a difficult dua to try and grasp. All that we've spoken about so far were created. It was a physical creation, a semi-immaterial realm of creation, an immaterial realm of creation. But it was to do with the realm of creation. But we have realms called immutable realms, non-created. They were since pre-eternity and will be. And here, if one has access to those realms and ascends to those realms, here, that realm collectively is called the essence of lordship. In Arabic, as-suq'ur rububi, the essence of lordship. And here, one enters a state of annihilation. Is annihilated in Allah. And in this essence of lordship, which is not created at all, was since pre-eternity and is, it's divided in, very broadly speaking, into two different stages. One is the realm of attributes, Allah's attributes, the names that Allah has, where you are annihilated in one or more names of Allah, and the maximum is when you are annihilated in the name Allah, which is a name integrating all Allah's names. And you are annihilated. So whatever you see, it's one or more of Allah's attributes. With the Imams, whatever they saw, it was Allah's attributes. See, sometimes whatever you see, it's Allah's actions. Although we don't see it, we only academically acknowledge it if we've studied the books. But some people's hearts, they see every action is Allah's action. This الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ, whatever Allah has created is good. Their heart sees this. So if someone swears at them, they don't get disappointed because their heart tells them it's from Allah. Now the person who swore, it's haram. They will get their due. That's another issue. Now we're talking about the person and their relationship with Allah, their proximity with Allah. Some people see this already. Some people, فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whichever way you turn, there's the face of Allah. They're drowned in Allah's attributes. This is a higher degree. When the doctor cures them, they see Allah's Shafi. The heart sees it. They're not intellectualizing about it. The heart sees it. See, these are, with some people, it's even with more and more names of Allah over time, until they're annihilated in the name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is, a name which covers all names. And then there's one degree higher than this phase. In the books of Irfan, they call it the phase of Wahidiyya. It's not important what it's called, but then there's one level higher than this, where people are annihilated in Allah's essence. They're not even paying attentiveness to the names, to the attributes of Allah. It's only His essence. Not even the attributes are paid attention to. Yes, all the attributes are integrated in this one essence, but it's the essence which they're attentive to. And they're not diverted from the essence. Now, here, when the verse, the dua says, Allahumma arifni nafsak, which level is referred to here? Is it the realm of attributes? The realm of where not even the attributes are paid attentiveness to? Or is it the physical realm? The semi-immaterial? Which? And the answer is, it's in the realm of attributes here. Because it says, Allahumma. So it says, oh my Allah, grant me irfan of you addressed Him as Allah. Grant me irfan of yourself, but I know you as Allah though. So here, we want to be granted the irfan of Allah's attributes in this particular dua, even though there is a higher station, and the prophets had that. But the focus here is to see Allah's attributes with the heart. Because Allah was that name, that proper noun, which is collective of all Allah's attributes. And we want this. That فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whichever way you turn, there's the face of Allah. We see the sun, the moon, a microphone, water. But a true arif will see Allah's attributes reflecting into his heart. Everything is different. And when they're annihilated in these attributes of Allah, it's a very difficult time for the arif. Because all they see is Allah's attributes. They're not even attentive to now the person, the doctor, the microphone. And in this stage, it's a very difficult stage. Because they may go onto a bus and not pay their ticket, for example, because they don't see it. This is the level of fana that they speak of. Here, those who reach a level of fana, they're never assigned as prophets or guides for people at this stage. And usually many urafa, they do fail in this way. They do things which they shouldn't. For example, Hallaj, said, I am the truth, I am the truth. And he was killed. He wasn't lying. He shouldn't have said it, shouldn't have disclosed it. Because all he could see is Allah, the truth. Sanurihim. There's one verse in the Quran. Sanurihim fil afaq wa fi anfusihim. If I'm not mistaken, that we will show them, Allah will show them سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم. Allah will show His signs, will manifest upon them, people, His signs on the horizons and in their souls. حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. Before it becomes clarified and clear for them that it's Allah is al-Haq, is the truth. And whatever you encounter within yourself, within the horizons, it's all Haq. But in a state of annihilation, it's very difficult for the Arif. And we have many books written on this, and the memoirs of certain Arifs. One translated into English was The Immaterial Soul, and the Arif there was Hashim Haddad. And the author gives a story. He goes into a bus and he says, "We've given you your fare." There were 6 of them, but he didn't see himself, and the story goes on. The point is, it's a very difficult phase. Imam Khomeini says that the failings that happen, not necessarily Sharia failing, but the failings that happen usually in this state is a result of not consolidating or solidifying the Sharia in practice. As a result of that, they sometimes, in a state of annihilation, they fail. But once divine sovereignty rules over the individual, and when they're in a state of annihilation, they're still conscious of their I, but all they see is Allah and His attributes. But now there's a higher level than that, the stage of baqa, where Allah's sovereignty rules over them and they know it's Allah's words, Allah's actions. And here they can now preach. They can be they're assigned prophethood. They're assigned as a guide for people. And whatever they say, it's Allah's words. Their actions, Allah's actions. They're still conscious of the I, but they're conscious that it's all coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing from them. They don't say anything from their own accord. But in this dua, when it says, Allahumma arifni nafsak, this is what we want to be. We want to be granted irfan of Allah, His attributes, that level. And that's why I had to go through this relatively long introduction. It's the stage of Allah's attributes, so that the heart becomes a recipient and sees, but not the seeing with this eye, the seeing of the heart. That's why arifni, grant me irfan of yourself, and self being Allah's attributes. فَإِنَّكَ إِن لَمْ تُعَرِفْنِي نَفْسَكَ, if you don't grant me this, لَمْ أَعْرِفْ رَسُولَكَ, then I can't be granted irfan of your messenger. Now here, we have to see what the reality of a messenger is. And the reality of a messenger is a manifestation, a maximum, complete manifestation of Allah's attributes. Look, the prophet, the reality of a prophet is the maximum manifestation of Allah's attributes. So if you don't have irfan of Allah's attributes in the first clause, how will you have irfan of the Prophet? How will you accept the Prophet? Yes, 1400 years ago, if we were there too, like the majority there 1400 years ago, our knowledge of the Prophet would be an academic acceptance. We don't know whether the heart would have recognized the Prophet. That's not easy. Our aql may guide us to him, but whether the heart would accept him, there's no guarantee. How can you when you don't have irfan of Allah's attributes? It's not possible. Yes, you see, the point is that you can't. Look, don't panic. I'm not saying you'll go to hell. Heaven has degrees. But for that true proximity, even proximity to the Holy Messenger, that we don't know. So here you can't have irfan of the Messenger, irfan of the Holy Messenger, without the irfan of Allah's attributes. Then it says in relation to the next clause that Allahumma arifni rasulak, give me irfan of your messenger. فإنك إن لم تعرفني رسولك لم أعرف حجتك. Otherwise I won't know your hujjah. Now, who is the hujjah here? It's the successors, the 12 successors. But what are you going to say during the greater occultation? What are you going to do there now? And that's why it doesn't say imamak. It says hujjatak. And that, I'll open that up a bit maybe tomorrow. So it's not limited to the 12 successors. There's a hujjah today, a living hujjah who has to enforce Islam right now. And we have to find them. We need a leader, we need a wali today during the greater occultation. Because we don't have access to the physical 12th Imam. We don't have that irfan of the 12th Imam. Yes, if you have irfan of the 12th Imam, yes, he will tell you what to do. But is there a hujjah on earth right now for this dua, which says, be careful, this is a dua for the greater occultation. Cling on to it. If it's only in relation to the 12th Imam, the dua may have said imamak, but it says hujjatak. When it says hujjatak, it can apply to other than the Ma'soom Imam too. Imam Khomeini was a hujjah on earth. There's no problem there. Yes, he wasn't Ma'soom, like the Imams were Ma'soom. But he can still act as a hujjah. You see? So here we see that the underlying prescription or equipment we have to equip ourselves with is Tawheed, and to be granted irfan of Allah's attributes. If we don't do that, it's all academic. With Imam Hussein alayhi salam, 1400 years ago in Karbala, those people on the enemy camp, they all were committed to the Sharia, more than me and you. They wouldn't have haram food. They wouldn't give interest to the banks. Their abidance of the Sharia, you can't compare it. Even Shim, the likes of Shim, would walk to Hajj more than 10 times. But he would walk. He would do Salatul Layl every night. But they were on the enemy camp. Yes. Why? Because they didn't have irfan of the Imam. We don't have irfan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That Imam Hussein that we remember, it's a historical Imam at best, which is okay, it's step wonder. We don't have irfan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But the cause is because we don't have irfan of Allah's attributes. That's the underlying cause. Our tawheed is compromised. Just evaluate yourself. How much tawheed have you even studied, let alone seen with your heart? Maybe you went to Sunday school or whatever, and they said Allah is one, not two. Finish. Now let's speak about wudu, for example. See? So I'll just end with this note that, okay, so how do we acquire that irfan of Allah's attributes? Well, first you have to know an academic knowing and accept the Holy Messenger. In one verse in the Holy Quran it reads, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. that if you want to love Allah, say, O Prophet, if you want to love Allah, tell the people that if you want to love Allah, O people, فَاتَّبِعُونِي, follow me. When it says follow me, it doesn't say follow my words, follow my actions. It says follow me. It includes all of these. Then Allah will love you. If Allah loves you, وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, all your sins will be forgiven. When Allah loves you, the ego is eliminated. And in traditions it says, whenever Allah loves you, He will kill you. Killing, when Allah kills you, He's killed your ego. You then enter the state of annihilation where you're drowned in Allah's attributes and so on and so forth. And He'll forgive you all your sins. Not the sins of the Sharia necessarily. That's part of it. The concealed shirk that we're so much drowned in. For example, when we say, I committed this action out of sincerity for Allah, we usually see the ego, I. We attribute the actions to ourselves. I did this out of sincerity. And the Allah is an academic Allah, a rational Allah at best. Look, 3 great veils of shirk, but concealed shirk. But this concealed shirk is killing everyone. Everyone is drowned in it. Okay, we don't have this shirk where we say Allah is God. I mean, this person is God. No, we don't have that. But concealed shirk means where our ibadah of Allah is compromised. And here, if you look at yourself and evaluate yourself and see that how much of my worship to Allah is compromised, how much of my worship and non-ibadah actions, how much is for Allah alone, for Allah's sake, period. Here, you would realize, if you're honest to yourself, that it's very little. For example, when we do salat, if we say, I'm doing salat al-layl so I can receive the benefits of it, it's not bad, don't worry, you'll have your heaven too. But it's concealed shirk, because Allah is used as a means to a particular reward that you want through Salatul Layl. The goal becomes that, it's not Allah. Or when you give charity, you think it's so your loved one, for example, their illness is relieved. You're using Allah as a means to this recovery. The recovery is the goal. That's why if it doesn't happen, you'll get disappointed. But some people, and you're not doing any haram. Let me re-emphasize. You're not doing anything haram, but you're contaminating your soul, your heart. And that contamination won't take you to hell, but it will limit your heaven. But some people may give charity irrespective of whether their loved one becomes ill or not. The imams are like this. Not only when a loved one becomes ill, they will do it every day. They do Salatul Layl for Allah's sake, irrespective of whether they're given the benefits or not. It's for Allah's sake alone. It's like, for example, a man says to his wife, I like you. Now that liking her may be because of cuisine that she prepares, or it likes her for who she is. Look, the difference between them. Or this other way around, a woman may say, I like you to the husband because of, let's say, the money he brings in, or because of who he is, irrespective of whether he has a high salary or not, or which liking is more important here. فَاتَّبِعُونِي, you follow me, then Allah will love you. When Allah loves you, the ego is eliminated. Yes, you're annihilated in Him. Now for us, it may happen temporarily. For the Imams, it was moment to moment. And see, with the Imams, they had that stage after Fana, which is called Bagha, where they reach annihilation in Allah's attributes, But then they reach a stage, because when you're in fana, you don't see other than Allah's attributes. With baqa, at the same time that you see, all you see is Allah's attributes, you're attentive to the physical realm too. And this is very difficult. To be attentive to creation at the same time that all you see are the attributes of Allah. And that's why, for example, the Holy Messenger would say, after every assembly with people, I would say istighfar 70 times, for example. Because that attentiveness to creation, even though it was their duty to do it, it would disappoint them. Not disappoint them, but it would affect them, that they would do istighfar. Here, fattabi'uni. This is the important protocol for me and you. The Prophet says, follow me. If we follow the Prophet in word and action and his states, word, the Sharia, the do's and don'ts, step 1. Very important step. It's only step 1, but it's the most essential, because step 2, without it, you would fail. In step 2, it's the tariqah, the Prophet's actions. Now this is outside the Sharia. Not forgiving people will contaminate the soul. Holding on to grudges will contaminate the soul. It's not a sin according to the Sharia, but you're contaminated. And if that grudge remains to the end of your life, the traditions say you've bought a share of your hell. That's why parents, for example, should never disown their children to the very end. Because if they do, it's a sign of holding on to grudges to the very end. Being jealous, for example, without disclosing that jealousy, it's a tariqa sin. It's not a sin according to the Sharia. And so, see, these noble ethical traits, these also have to be, these are traits of the Holy Messenger. The word of the Holy Messenger we abide by. The traits of the Holy Messenger we have to master. We have to follow the Holy Messenger. Allama Tabatawi has a book, Sunanun Nabi. And he's cherry-picked very good ethical ahadith which illustrate the akhlaq of the Holy Messenger. The Holy Messenger would always be generous, for example, would always forgive, never hold on to grudges, would always speak against oppression, would always voice against oppression and wrongdoings. He was just. It's an attribute of Allah. With irfan, you have to be careful not to get carried away. It's all love. Love everyone, do this and do that. You have to also be just. All the prophets would voice against oppression. No one would ever be silent. Even when they would sign a treaty with the kuffar, they would say, you are the enemy. We are Islam. But for some masnad, we'll now sign a treaty. But not that we're friends. He would never compromise this voicing of oppression. Fattabi'uni. If all these are mastered in the tariqah, then Allah's love will come, and then you start seeing the attributes with your heart. Then, Allahumma arifni nafsak, now it's starting. So yes, it's starting with knowledge, academic knowledge, knowing the Prophet, knowing what to do, what your responsibilities are, according to the Sharia, according to the tariqah, but then implementing them, incorporating them, and then the heart begins to see. Then the heart will see. The heart 1400 years ago would have recognized the messenger. The heart 1400 years ago would have recognized the Imam, would have recognized Imam Hussein, would recognize the 12th Imam when he comes. But just because you're a Muslim who has studied all the books on the 12th Imam, the corrupt heart will even reject the 12th Imam. And we have ahadith on this. So one shouldn't be complacent. Inshallah, tomorrow, this hujjah has to be opened up, and it's a bit more socio-political, with your permission. Wasallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.